The night split open with a roar. The outpost shook like a brittle tin can under a boot. Mortars landed in staggered bursts, pounding sand and stone into the air. A radio antenna snapped in half, its twisted metal sparking as it toppled. A soldier screamed somewhere in the dark, muffled by the whistle of shrapnel. Specialist Mara Klein kept her head down. Her hands were buried inside the belly of the comms console, a mess of blackened wires and smoking circuits. She tasted ash on her tongue, the acrid sting of burning insulation clinging to her nostrils. The battalion's lifeline to headquarters was dead, and she was the only comms tech left standing. "Specialist, we need that damn radio yesterday." Captain Hender's voice boomed from outside the bunker. "I'm on it, sir," she shouted back, though her knuckles were bleeding from stripped screws and sharp edges. Another boom. The bunker lights flickered once, then steadied on generator power. Mara worked in silence, her jaw locked. One wire too loose, one capacitor fried, and the entire FOB would be deaf, blind, and alone in the desert night. Outside, the squad fought to repel the attackers, insurgents testing the wire, probing for weaknesses. Mara could hear the staccato bark of M4 rifles and the heavier thud of the saw echoing like angry thunder. She clenched a wire with her teeth, yanked a new capacitor from her toolkit, and jammed it into place with shaking fingers. Click. Snap. Pray. "Try it now," she barked toward Private Deacon, who hovered anxiously by the secondary receiver. Deacon twisted the knob. For a moment, nothing. Then, through the hiss of static, a voice emerged. "Alpha 1, this is Guardian. Sitrep, over." Mara exhaled hard, relief mixing with adrenaline. "Got it." She pushed herself off the floor just as the bunker door burst open. Captain Henders ducked in, eyes wild. "You're a miracle worker, Specialist. Now patch me through." Mara wiped her hands on her dusty pants and slid into the operator's chair. She keyed the MIC Guardian, "This is Alpha 1. We're under heavy indirect fire, grid 32 Delta. Requesting immediate support, over." "Copy, Alpha 1. Reinforcements en route. ETA 20 mics. Hold your ground." The channel went silent. 20 minutes. They had to survive 20 minutes. Outside, the attack intensified. Mortars gave way to small arms fire and RPG streaks. Mara grabbed her helmet, strapped on her vest, and sprinted to the sandbag perimeter with her M4 slung tight. She wasn't a frontline grunt, but tonight, every hand was a trigger. Deacon was firing short bursts, his face pale. Beside him, Staff Sergeant Herrera barked orders like a drill sergeant possessed. "Keep those arcs tight. Don't waste ammo on ghosts." Mara dropped beside them, heart pounding. A shadow darted near the wire, and she squeezed off 2 rounds. The figure crumpled. Her stomach lurched, but she kept firing. She wasn't trained for this. Not really. Comm school, radio repair, troubleshooting software glitches, that was her world. But out here, under the blood-red desert sky, there was no difference between a radio operator and an infantryman. 10 minutes in, the first casualty came. Private Sandoval took a round through the leg, screaming as he collapsed. Mara crawled to him, dragging his body behind the sandbags. Blood poured from the wound, slicking her hands. "Pressure, keep pressure," she muttered, pressing her bandage into the wound. Sandoval's face was ghost white. You're good," Mara whispered, though her voice shook. She tied the bandage, slapped a tourniquet higher on his thigh, and left him with Deacon. "Keep him talking." Her rifle barked again. The line held. Barely. At the 15-minute mark, the sky lit with a new sound, a sharp, chopping thunder. Rotors. The insurgents scattered like smoke under a fan as 2 Black Hawks swept low, miniguns chewing the sand to ribbons. The ground vibrated with their fury, and Mara sagged against the sandbags, sweat dripping down her temples. They'd survived. For now. The gunships circled once more, laying suppressive fire, then peeled off to escort incoming reinforcements. The desert quieted, broken only by the crackle of burning debris. Captain Henders strode over, his uniform streaked with soot. "Specialist Klein," he said, voice steady but softer now. "You just kept us alive. Hell of a job." Mara nodded, exhaustion catching up to her. "Just doing my part, sir." But inside, her chest was a knot of emotions, relief, guilt, adrenaline, and a nagging fear that tonight was only the beginning. They regrouped in the command tent. Maps spread across the table, coffee steaming in dented mugs. The officers huddled, but Mara lingered on the edge, listening. Insurgents were probing. "Testing defenses," Herrera said. That wasn't their full force. They'll be back, Henders agreed grimly. Next time, heavier. Mara's eyes fell to the busted antenna outside, lying like a snapped bone against the sand. The comms had held, but barely. She'd saved them once. But could she do it again? That night, sleep didn't come. Mara lay in her cot, staring at the ceiling of the barracks tent. Around her, men and women snored, shifted, or whispered in their dreams. She replayed the firefight in her head, the face of the man she shot, Sandoval's scream, the acrid smell of burning circuits. She whispered to herself, a mantra, stay sharp. Keep them talking. Keep them alive. But another thought haunted her, what if the radio fails again? What if I fail again? 2 days later, reinforcements arrived, a Navy SEAL detachment sent to strengthen the outpost. They were shadows in desert camo, confident, moving with the kind of precision that made the younger soldiers stare. One of them, a lieutenant with sharp blue eyes and a scar along his jaw, strode into the comms tent where Mara was soldering a replacement circuit board. You the wizard who brought the radio back from the dead? He asked. Mara didn't look up. If by wizard you mean someone who knows which end of the soldering iron gets hot, then yeah. The lieutenant chuckled. Name's Hale. SEAL Team 5. We heard you kept this place breathing the other night. Mara finally glanced up. Specialist Klein. And I just did my job. But Hale's expression was serious. He straightened, gave her a crisp salute. It stunned her. Salutes weren't for specialists like her, especially not from Navy officers. She blinked, heat rising in her cheeks. Respect where it's due, Hale said simply, then left her staring at her soldering iron like it had just grown wings. That salute lodged itself in her chest. Mara didn't crave recognition. Hell, she usually preferred to be invisible, tucked behind a console. But Hale's gesture carried weight. A SEAL lieutenant had looked at her and seen something worth honoring. It made her wonder, maybe her role wasn't just about radios and wires. Maybe her hands on the circuits meant as much as hands on a trigger. Maybe her fight was just beginning. The desert had a way of giving answers in fire and blood. 3 nights later, the insurgents came back. This time with twice the numbers, armored trucks, and heavy guns. The outpost braced. Soldiers lined the wire, rifles ready. Mara sat at her console, headset tight, voice calm as she relayed grid coordinates to the gunships. But when the first RPG slammed into the generator shack, cutting power and plunging the comms into silence, Mara's gut clenched. Not again. Not now. The board went dead. All eyes turned to her. And Mara Klein realized this was the moment where her decisions wouldn't just patch radios. They'd decide who lived, who died, and whether this outpost would stand or burn. The comms board went dead with a hiss and a pop. The lights in the bunker flickered once, then vanished, leaving Mara Klein's face bathed in the cold glow of failing screens. Outside, gunfire erupted like a thunderstorm, tracer rounds cutting red and green streaks across the desert night. The generator shack, once humming steady in the background, was now a column of smoke and flame. Goddamn it. Captain Henders barked, slamming his fist against the map table. They took out the generator. Klein, tell me we've got backup power. Mara ripped her headset off and crouched under the console. Her hands moved instinctively through the rat's nest of wires. The secondary battery should have kicked in automatically, but it hadn't. It's fried, Mara said, forcing her voice steady. EMP surge from the blast probably cooked the relays. Then fix it. No pressure, she muttered, biting her lip as she yanked open a scorched panel. Outside, the world was chaos. Sergeant Herrera's voice cut through the clatter of M4 fire. Hold the line. Keep your sectors tight. Private Deacon screamed over the din, contact left. They're flanking. Mara heard every word, but her battlefield was inside the console. She pulled a spare power cell from her toolkit, slotted it into place, and twisted the leads together with her teeth. A spark jumped. Her fingers burned. She ignored it. The console screen flickered weakly. Then, with a low hum, one channel came alive. Static hissed, then a broken voice. Alpha 1, repeat, do you copy? Mara grabbed the MIC Guardian, this is Alpha 1. We've lost main power, running on emergency. Hostiles at the wire, multiple technicals with mounted guns. Request immediate support. Alpha 1, copy. Reinforcements 5 minutes out. You need to hold. Roger that, Mara said, and slammed her fist on the table. 5 minutes. Henders was already sprinting to the line. Hale, the SEAL lieutenant, appeared in the doorway, rifle slung, face streaked with sweat and sand. You got comms? He asked. Barely, Mara said. Good. Because without you, we're cut off. Hale's tone wasn't flattery, it was fact. He pulled his NVGs down and cocked his rifle. Stay alive, specialist. I'll buy you time. He disappeared into the night. Mara strapped her helmet on, grabbed her M4, and ran after him. She could fix radios, but she couldn't fix silence, and silence was death. The perimeter was a storm of muzzle flashes. Insurgents pressed hard against the wire, their silhouettes darting low and fast. The rattle of a PKM machine gun ripped through the sandbags, showering Mara with dirt. Herrera spotted her. Klein. Get low, damn it. Mara dropped beside Deacon, who was firing wildly. Control your bursts, she snapped, grabbing his barrel to steady it. He blinked at her, fear wide in his eyes, and nodded. Together, they aimed into the darkness. She saw movement near the wire, 2 insurgents with bolt cutters. Mara squeezed the trigger. Her rounds caught one in the chest, dropping him. The other stumbled, caught in Deacon's fire. Nice. Deacon gasped, his voice shaking. Don't thank me yet, Mara muttered. Then came the roar. An armored technical barreled toward the wire, its mounted DSHK heavy machine gun blazing. The rounds tore through sandbags like paper. Soldiers dove for cover, screaming. Henders shouted, AT-4. Get me an AT-4. But the only anti-armor weapon they had was on the far side of the perimeter. Too far. Mara's stomach dropped. If that truck breached, the outpost was done. And then Hale moved. The SEAL lieutenant sprinted straight into the open, RPG over his shoulder. The DSHK tracked him, rounds chewing up sand around his boots. Mara's breath caught. Hale, no, someone shouted. But Hale didn't hesitate. He dropped to one knee, sighted, and fired. The rocket streaked across the night and slammed into the truck's engine block. The explosion lit the desert, flipping the vehicle sideways in a plume of smoke. The line erupted in cheers, but Hale was already back on his feet, barking orders. Push them back. Don't let them regroup. For a moment, the tide turned. Mara kept firing in short, sharp bursts, every squeeze deliberate. Her rifle grew hot in her hands. Sandoval, his leg bandaged, leaned against the sandbags and popped shots with gritted teeth. It almost felt like they might hold. Then another explosion shook the earth. The ground trembled beneath Mara's boots. A second technical, this one heavier, smashed through the southern wire. Insurgents poured in behind it, shouting war cries. Herrera cursed. They're inside the wire. Fall back to secondary positions. Mara grabbed Deacon's vest and yanked him back. They sprinted to the inner perimeter, heartbeats pounding louder than the gunfire. The outpost had become a maze of fire and shadows. Soldiers darted between cover, firing desperately. The heavy truck tore through tents and crates, its gun spitting fire. Mara skidded into the command tent. The comms console flickered, its screen dimming. She slapped it, praying it would hold. Guardian, this is Alpha 1. We've got a breach. Hostiles inside the wire, repeat, inside the wire. We need air support now. Alpha 1, air support 2 minutes out. Hold at all costs. 2 minutes. Mara slammed a fresh mag into her rifle. She wasn't a grunt, wasn't trained for CQB like Hale or Herrera. But if the comms died now, they were blind. She planted herself by the console, back to the wall, finger tight on the trigger. Through the open flap, she saw Hale move like a ghost, swift, precise, his team of SEALs cutting down insurgents room by room. But even they were being stretched thin. Then the truck's heavy gun swiveled toward the command tent. Mara's blood froze. The first burst shredded the sandbags outside. Dust and smoke filled her lungs. She dove under the console as rounds ripped through the canvas walls, sparks showering her back. Shit. Shit, she gasped, curling tight. The console sparked violently. The screen went black. The last sliver of comms, gone. Her worst nightmare, realized. The tent collapsed around her. Mara clawed her way out, coughing. She could see Hale across the yard, pinned down by the truck's fire. Soldiers were scattered, falling back, breaking apart. And in her chest, panic surged. We're cut off. No comms. No hope. But then she remembered the emergency SAT kit stowed in the generator shack, if it hadn't been obliterated in the blast. She ran. Bullets kicked up dirt at her heels. She sprinted low, weaving, lungs burning. The shack was half collapsed, flames licking the roof. She shoved debris aside, coughing smoke, and spotted the green SAT case wedged under a beam. Yes, she gasped, dragging it free. A shadow loomed behind her. She spun. An insurgent rushed, knife in hand. Mara fired. The shot echoed in the ruined shack. He dropped, knife clattering across the floor. Her hands shook, but she forced them steady. She hauled the SAT case to her chest and sprinted back toward the command area. Hale met her halfway, his face streaked with dust. "You're insane," he barked, eyes flicking to the case. "Satellite link," Mara panted. "We can call fire on their heads." His jaw tightened, then he nodded once. "Do it." They dove behind cover. Mara cracked the case, pulled out the ruggedized handset, and powered it on. The signal blinked red. Searching, then green. "Guardian, this is Alpha 1, Satlink." Mara shouted into the handset. "We need airstrike on our grid, danger close." "Alpha 1, copy. Spectre gunship inbound. ETA 60 seconds. Make it 30. Mara snarled, ducking as rounds pinged off the rubble. Hale gave her a sharp look, half a grin despite the chaos. "Didn't know comms techs had fangs." "Only when the radio's down," she shot back. Then the night roared anew. The AC-130 Spectre arrived like an avenging god. Its miniguns and howitzers tore into the armored truck, ripping it to shreds. Mara and Hale shielded their faces as shockwaves rattled their bones. Insurgents scattered, cut down in sheets of fire. Within minutes, the yard was silent but for crackling flames. Soldiers emerged from cover, coughing, bleeding, shaken, but alive. Mara collapsed onto the sand, clutching the SAT handset. Her hands trembled uncontrollably now that the adrenaline bled away. Hale crouched beside her, eyes steady. "You just saved this outpost." She shook her head, voice hoarse. "We lost comms. We lost control." "You didn't quit," he said. He reached out, tapped her bloody knuckles. "That's the difference." But as medics carried the wounded past, as smoke curled into the black desert sky, Mara knew the truth. This wasn't over. The insurgents had tested them once. Then again. Each time harder, sharper, closer. And if tonight proved anything, it was this. The outpost was a target. And she was the spark keeping it alive. The outpost stank of smoke, diesel, and blood. Hours after the gunship had silenced the battlefield, the survivors still worked in grim silence. Medics dragged stretchers through the dust. Engineers doused the last of the generator shack's flames with chemical foam. Herrera paced the perimeter like a caged wolf, shouting at exhausted privates to reset sandbags and restring wire. Mara sat on an ammo crate with her rifle across her knees, staring at her hands. The blood was still there, dried into the lines of her palms, though most of it wasn't hers. She'd shot a man at point-blank range. Her stomach churned, but the thought wouldn't leave. Across the yard, Lieutenant Hale moved among his SEALs. They were calm, efficient, patching gear, double-checking weapons, speaking in quiet tones. Mara couldn't hear what they said, but she could feel the gravity. They knew this wasn't over. Captain Henders called everyone to the center of the compound. His voice was sharp, brittle with fatigue but commanding. "Listen up. Tonight proved what we already knew. This outpost isn't just some desert waypoint. It's a target. And they're not going to stop until they've buried us or we've burned them down first." He pointed to the smoldering wreck of the Technical. "They'll be back. Bigger. Smarter. We can't just sit here waiting to be hit." Herrera growled, "So we take the fight to them?" "Exactly," Henders said. His eyes swept the formation, pausing on Hale. "Our intel says there's a weapons cache 2 clicks east, hidden in the dunes. RPGs, mortars, enough to flatten us twice over. If we take it out, we cripple their next assault." Hale nodded once. "We'll lead the strike. But we'll need support. Someone who knows comms, can call fire on target." Mara froze. Hale's eyes had already shifted to her. Specialist Klein. Every head turned. Mara's throat went dry. "Sir, I'm not." "You're exactly what we need," Hale cut in. "You kept this place alive twice. You're coming." Henders added, "That's an order, Specialist." The knot in her stomach twisted tighter. She wasn't built for offensive missions. She was comms, support. But looking at the burnt-out generator, at the empty stretchers carried past, she knew there was no choice. "Yes, sir," she said softly. They moved before dawn. The desert was a vast ocean of shadows, cold and silent. Mara rode in the back of the lead MIP, headset snug over her ears, rifle against her chest. Her gear felt heavier than usual, every strap digging into her shoulders. Deacon sat beside her, jittery. His bandana was soaked in sweat despite the chill. You think we'll make it back? Don't think, Mara muttered. Just do. Hale, up front, turned in his seat. That's good advice, specialist. His grin was faint, sharp. Stick to me. You'll be fine. Mara didn't answer. She wasn't sure if he meant it as reassurance or a dare. The convoy halted a kilometer out. Engines killed, doors opened with soft thunks. The desert swallowed them. Herrera whispered, dismount. Silent from here. They moved on foot, a line of shadows slipping across the dunes. Hale's team flowed like water, each man a piece of a machine. Mara trudged behind them, every crunch of sand beneath her boots sounding like thunder in her own ears. The cache was hidden in a wadi, a shallow ravine where the sand dipped low. From the ridge, Mara peered down and saw it. 2 trucks under camo netting, stacks of crates, men with rifles lounging by lantern light. Target confirmed, Hale whispered. He tapped Mara's shoulder. Your show. Her hands trembled as she keyed the sat handset. Guardian, this is Strike 1. Grid coordinates inbound. Request fire mission, danger close. Strike 1, copy. Stand by. She exhaled slow, but then the voice in her earpiece changed. Urgent. Tight. Negative fire mission, Strike 1. Civilians detected near grid. Repeat, civilians in area. Mara's heart stopped. She looked again. Lantern light flickered on shapes she hadn't noticed before, women, children huddled under a canvas sheet near the trucks. Shields. Human shields. Hale swore under his breath. They're using them as cover. Herrera's jaw clenched. We can't level the place without killing half the village. All eyes turned to Mara again. The comms tech. The decision maker. Her stomach twisted. We can't call fire. Not like this. So we go in quiet, Hale said. Hit hard, surgical. Free the civilians, burn the cache. Hender's voice was a low growl. That's suicide. Or it's the only shot we've got. Hale's eyes cut to Mara. You in? Mara's mouth was dry. She thought of Sandoval's scream, of Deacon's panic, of the salute Hale had given her days ago. She nodded. I'm in. They went down the wadi like ghosts. Hale led, knife in hand, sliding through the shadows. His seals fanned out, suppressors ready. Herrera and the army squad covered flanks. Mara crouched low, sat handset clipped to her vest, rifle tight to her shoulder. The first sentry never saw them. Hale's blade flashed, and the man dropped without a sound. 2 more fell to silence shots. The insurgents by the trucks laughed around their lantern, oblivious. Mara's heart hammered. Each step felt like it echoed across the desert. Then a child's cry pierced the night. Every head turned. One of the insurgents barked, shoving a civilian back under the tarp. The moment stretched, thin as glass. And then it shattered. A shout. A rifle lifted. Muzzle flashes tore the night apart. Contact front. Herrera roared. Chaos erupted. Suppressed fire became full auto thunder. Insurgents scrambled, dragging rifles from crates, sprinting for cover. Civilians screamed, scattering into the sand. Mara dove behind a rock, firing blindly. Her rounds snapped into the dark. A bullet whizzed past her cheek, close enough to burn. Push. Keep them pinned. Hale barked, moving like lightning, cutting across the fire line with surgical precision. Deacon fell beside Mara, eyes wild. They're everywhere. Focus, she shouted, shoving his barrel toward the lantern light. Shoot where they're moving. He obeyed, his shot steadier this time. An RPG whooshed past, exploding against the ridge where Herrera's squad had been. Sand and stone rained down. We're exposed. Herrera bellowed. Mara fumbled for the sat handset. Guardian, this is Strike 1. Troops in contact, Grid 47 Alpha. We need immediate close air, danger close. Strike 1, Roger. Jets inbound, 2 mics out. 2 minutes. Again. Always 2 minutes. She clenched her rifle. We've got to hold until then. Hale grabbed her shoulder, pulling her low as another burst chewed up sand. His eyes locked on hers, fierce but steady. Breathe, Klein. You got this. She nodded, throat tight. Then she rose, sighted, and dropped an insurgent trying to drag a mortar tube into position. Her fear twisted into focus, her shots sharper now. The firefight burned hot and brutal. Civilians scrambled free as soldiers herded them toward the ridge. Insurgents fell, one by one, but more spilled from the shadows, drawn by the noise. Then the jets came. The desert howled as twin F-16s screamed overhead, their bombs tearing the wadi apart. Fire blossomed, sand geysered, trucks flipped like toys. Mara ducked, covering her head as shockwaves rolled through her bones. When the dust settled, the cache was gone. Nothing but fire and twisted metal. Silence fell, broken only by the sobs of civilians and the groans of the wounded. Back at the outpost, dawn broke red over the sand. Mara sat on the ramp of the MIP, helmet off, hair plastered to her forehead with sweat. Her body shook, exhaustion pressing her down like stone. Herrera walked past, clapping her shoulder. "You did good, specialist." Deacon collapsed beside her, grinning weakly. "I didn't pee myself this time." "Progress." Mara laughed once, sharp and shaky. Hale approached, dust and soot streaking his uniform. He crouched in front of her, eyes steady. "You made the call. You saved lives. Don't forget that." She looked away. "We still lost people." "We always will," Hale said. His voice was quiet, but the weight in it was heavy. "The question is, how many more if you weren't there?" Mara swallowed hard. She didn't answer. But in her chest, she knew the truth. This war wasn't waiting for her to be ready. And whether she liked it or not, she was part of it now. The desert sunrise painted the sky in streaks of red and gold, but to the soldiers at the outpost, it looked like blood on sand. The weapons cache was gone, annihilated by F-16 bombs. Civilians were freed and moved to a nearby safe village. On paper, it was a success. But success came with a cost. 2 soldiers didn't return from the raid. Corporal Vance and Private Gillian, names Mara had memorized the night before as they geared up, voices she still heard in fragments. Now they were silence. Mara sat on a folding chair outside the comms tent, the sat handset in her lap. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep. The desert wind stung her skin. Herrera strode by, barking at privates to reset the wire perimeter yet again. Henders disappeared into the command tent to draft casualty reports. Hale leaned against the MIP, arms folded, studying her quietly. She felt his eyes but didn't meet them. By noon, the heat pressed down like an anvil. Sweat dripped into Mara's collar as she rewired the battered comms console, rebuilding what the last assault had destroyed. Her fingers worked automatically, cut, strip, solder, test, but her mind was far away. The man she'd shot in the generator shack. The civilians huddled under tarps in the wadi. The fire that turned trucks into twisted skeletons. The war wasn't numbers on a map anymore. It was faces. Names. Moments burned into her skin. Deacon stuck his head into the tent. "Specialist? The captain wants you at the briefing." She sighed, wiped her hands, and followed. The command tent was cramped, hot, the air thick with coffee and sweat. Henders stood at the head of the map table, Hale and Herrera flanking him. Mara slipped inside, standing stiff. Henders pointed at a drone image spread across the table. "This was taken an hour ago. Insurgents massing here, 10 kilometers south. Convoy of trucks, possibly technicals. Looks like payback for the cache." Herrera cursed under his breath. "They're coming for us." "Most likely," Henders said grimly. "We're still repairing comms, we've got wounded, and our supplies are thin. If they hit us with full force, we won't last long." Mara spoke before she realized the words were leaving her mouth. "So let's not wait for them to hit us." The room went quiet. Henders turned to her. "What are you suggesting, specialist?" Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to continue. "We intercepted their radios last night, remember? They're sloppy. If we jam their comms, scatter their convoy, we can buy time, maybe force them into ambush zones instead of letting them come here." Hale's eyes lit with a spark of approval. "She's right. Take away their coordination, they're just angry men with rifles." Herrera scratched his chin. "But jamming requires mobile equipment. Someone's got to get close to their convoy to pull it off." Mara swallowed hard. She knew what was coming before Henders even said it. "Klein," Henders said. "That's your department. Can you rig it?" "Yes, sir," she said quietly. Her pulse was a hammer in her throat. The mission launched that evening. Mara sat in the back of a Humvee, cradling a jury-rigged jammer built from spare parts, batteries, and the guts of their ruined console. The device hummed faintly, lights blinking in irregular rhythm. It felt fragile, like it could fall apart at the first bump. Deacon sat across from her, checking his rifle obsessively. "We shouldn't be out here," he muttered. "This feels like suicide." Cheerful as ever, Mara said, trying to mask her own fear. Hale, in the passenger seat, turned back. It's not suicide if we do it right. It's survival. And survival's about guts and grit. His eyes landed on Mara. And a comms tech who doesn't know when to quit. Her lips twitched. Guess that's me. They parked half a kilometer from the projected convoy route, concealed behind a jagged dune. The desert stretched endless and empty, shadows lengthening with the sinking sun. Mara set up the jammer, connecting cables, adjusting dials. Her hands moved steady, though sweat dripped down her neck. Herrera crouched beside her. Once you flip this on, they'll know something's wrong. You'll have maybe 5 minutes before they triangulate us. Then I'll make it a good 5 minutes, Mara said. The sergeant grinned despite himself. Damn, specialist. You're starting to sound like one of us. The rumble came first, a low vibration through the sand. Then dust on the horizon. Headlights glimmered faint in the dusk. The convoy. Trucks, technicals, men riding in the beds with rifles raised. A tide of steel and anger. Mara's breath hitched. She flicked the switch. The jammer whined. Static filled her headset. Across the desert, she saw confusion ripple through the convoy. Radios lifted to ears, men shouting, signals not getting through. The formation wavered, trucks slowing, scattering. It's working, Mara whispered. Hale's voice was sharp. Herrera, hit them now. Gunfire exploded from the ridge as Herrera's squad ambushed the lead vehicles. RPG trails streaked the night, slamming into technicals. Chaos tore the convoy apart. Mara held the jammer steady, dials twitching. Her heart raced. She felt the enemy's panic like heat on her skin. But then the jammer sparked. Shit, she hissed, smacking the panel. Come on, hold. The convoy was regrouping, men pouring from trucks, spraying wildfire into the dunes. Bullets cracked overhead. Klein. Hale barked. We need more time. I'm trying. Sparks bit her fingers. She grit her teeth, crossed 2 wires barehanded. The pain made her gasp, but the jammer steadied, humming again. The convoy staggered once more. Got it, she shouted. The firefight raged. Herrera's squad poured lead from the ridge. Hale's SEALs moved like wraiths, precision fire cutting insurgents down. Mara stayed low, clutching the jammer like it was her own heartbeat. Deacon fired beside her, teeth bared in something between terror and fury. Then an RPG screamed overhead, exploding behind them. Sand rained down, hot and sharp. Mara's ears rang. Through the haze, she saw a truck break free of the confusion, barreling straight toward their dune. Hale shouted, AT-4. Take it out. But Herrera was too far, his men pinned. Deacon fumbled for the launcher, hands shaking. I can't. Mara grabbed it. She'd never fired one before, not outside of training. Her arms shook under the weight. She braced against the dune, sighted the roaring truck, and pulled the trigger. The rocket streaked across the sand, slamming dead center into the hood. The truck erupted in fire, flipping sideways in a plume of smoke. Mara fell backward, ears ringing, heart thundering. Deacon stared at her, eyes wide. Holy shit. You just... Don't say it, she panted, dropping the tube. The fight lasted minutes, but felt like hours. By the time the last insurgent fled into the desert, the convoy was shattered. Trucks burned, weapons scattered. Herrera's men whooped and hollered, but Hale's SEALs stayed silent, scanning the horizon. Mara shut down the jammer, her hands raw, her body trembling. She stared at the smoking battlefield, the broken machines, the bodies. Hale crouched beside her. His face was grim but his voice was steady. You bought us that win. Without you, they'd have steamrolled us. Mara shook her head. We killed them. We killed so many. And saved more, Hale said. His eyes were sharp, unflinching. This isn't about numbers, specialist. It's about who's still breathing because of you. She swallowed hard, forcing down the bile. Because he was right. They returned to the outpost before dawn, battered but alive. The victory lifted morale, but Mara felt no triumph, only weight. That night, as she sat alone by the comms console, Hale approached quietly. You're not the same soldier you were a week ago, he said. Feels like I'm not the same person, Mara admitted. He studied her. That's war. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. But you've got something most don't. What's that? She asked. Hale gave her that faint grin again. You don't quit. Even when you should. Mara laughed once, hollow. Not sure if that's a compliment. It is, Hale said simply. Then he saluted her again, crisp and deliberate. She stared at him, the weight of the gesture sinking in. And for the first time since the desert had swallowed her whole, she felt something stir beneath the fear. Not pride. Not yet. But resolve. The desert didn't sleep after the battle. Smoke still curled from the convoy's wrecks, drifting into a sky bleached pale by dawn. The outpost stank of cordite, diesel, and burned metal. Mara hadn't slept. She'd spent the night bent over the console, skin raw where the wire burns blistered her palms. She told herself the busy work kept her sane. If she stopped, she'd hear the screams again. By morning, Captain Henders summoned them. The briefing tent was tense, the air heavy. Herrera's men leaned silent against the canvas, faces smeared with dust. Hale's SEALs were statues, eyes watchful. Henders pointed to satellite photos spread across the table. The convoy we shattered wasn't their whole strength. Intel just confirmed, multiple enemy groups moving from different directions. Looks like they're planning to surround us. A ripple of unease swept the room. How many? Herrera asked. Could be 50. Could be 200, Henders said flatly. Our supply lines cut. No reinforcements for 72 hours. Mara's gut clenched. 3 days. They had to hold 3 days in this crumbling outpost, with dwindling ammo, limited water, and half their defenses barely functional. Herrera muttered a curse. Hale remained silent, his eyes drifting to Mara like he already knew she'd be dragged into this. By mid-afternoon, the outpost became a hive of frantic preparation. Soldiers reinforced sandbag walls, strung razor wire, dug firing positions. Mara rebuilt the comms mast with spare tubing, welding sparks biting her skin. Deacon carried crates of ammo past her, shaking his head. We're gonna die out here. Just like Vance and Jillian. Only slower. Shut up and carry, Mara snapped, surprising herself with the steel in her tone. Deacon blinked at her, startled. He opened his mouth, closed it, and trudged on. Mara exhaled shakily, staring at the mast. She wasn't used to snapping at anyone. But fear was an infection. If she let it spread, it would rot them all. At dusk, Hale found her sitting against a wall, wiping grime from her face with a rag. You held it together out there, he said. I barely did, she muttered. Half the time I didn't know what I was doing. That's the point, Hale said, crouching beside her. No one knows. We just keep moving forward anyway. She studied him, the lines of exhaustion etched into his features. He wasn't invincible, just relentless. And for some reason, he decided she had that same grit. 3 days, she whispered. Hale gave a tight nod. 3 days. If we hold, reinforcements arrive. If not, he let the silence finish the sentence. The attack came at midnight. The first mortar landed outside the wire, a thunderclap that rattled the ground. Then more, walking closer, explosions tearing sand and steel apart. Contact! Contact! Voices screamed across the outpost. Mara dove into the comms tent, hands flying over switches. The generator flickered, lights dimming. Herrera's voice crackled over the headset. They're probing from the east. Technicals and infantry. Gunfire shredded the night. The rattle of saws, the thump of .50 cals. Mara could hear men yelling, the metallic shriek of ricochets. She relayed positions, shifted frequencies, patched broken headsets. Her heart pounded like a drum, but her voice stayed calm. Then static swallowed Herrera's voice. Shit, Mara hissed, twisting dials. The east defense line had gone dark. Either the gear was fried, or Herrera was down. Without thinking, she grabbed her rifle. She sprinted through the dark, sand kicking under her boots. Mortars thudded around her, shockwaves rattling her bones. The eastern line was chaos, sandbags shredded, razor wire blown open. Insurgents poured through the breach, firing wildly. Herrera's men fought tooth and nail, but they were outnumbered 3-1. Mara dropped behind cover, firing into the wave. She wasn't a crack shot, but the sight of insurgents charging made her squeeze the trigger without hesitation. Herrera shouted from behind a busted Humvee, blood streaking his arm. Klein! What the hell are you doing here? Your comms are down. We're blind without you, she yelled back. Then fix it, damn it. She dashed through the chaos, sliding into the shredded comms box. The wiring was fried, sparks dancing across blackened metal. She bit down on fear and worked, splicing cables by touch, her hands bleeding. Bullets cracked overhead. Shouts rose and fell. She tuned it out, focusing on the hum of current, the flicker of a green light, alive again. "East Line, you're back online," she screamed into the headset. Herrera barked orders, his men rallying with renewed coordination. Grenades arced into the breach, fire lighting the night. The insurgent wave faltered, broken against sheer defiance. Hours blurred into madness. The insurgents tested every wall, shifting attacks from east to west, probing, pulling back, hitting again. Mara became the nerve center, patching gear, relaying orders, even grabbing a rifle when the line faltered. By dawn, the outpost still stood, but barely. Half the perimeter was rubble. Ammo crates were nearly empty. Blood smeared the sand, some theirs, some the enemy's. Mara sat slumped against the mast, hands shaking. She felt hollowed out, like the desert had scraped her clean. Hale approached, dropping beside her with a canteen. His uniform was torn, dust blackening his face. Yet his eyes still burned steady. "You kept us alive," he said. She laughed once, bitter. "For now. That's all survival is," Hale said. "One moment at a time." The second night was worse. The insurgents brought trucks mounted with heavy guns, spraying the walls with streams of fire. Mortars fell like rain. The outpost shook with every blast. Mara ran herself ragged, darting from tent to wall, rewiring, relaying, reloading. At one point she dragged a wounded private back under cover, blood soaking her sleeves. Deacon appeared beside her, firing into the dark, his earlier fear gone. "They're not gonna break us," he shouted. "Not if I can help it," Mara yelled back, slamming a fresh mag into her rifle. At 0300, an RPG tore through the comms tent, collapsing it in flames. Mara was thrown to the ground, ears ringing, chest burning. She crawled to the wreckage, coughing smoke, clutching the blackened radio core. Somehow, it still flickered faintly. She cradled it like a dying child, dragging it under cover. "You're insane," Herrera growled, pulling her to her feet. "Without this, we're blind," she rasped. Herrera stared at her for a long moment, then barked a laugh. "Damn. You're one of us, Klein." By the third day, they were ghosts. Exhaustion hollowed every face. Ammo was down to a handful of mags per man. The wounded filled cots under torn canvas. Mara's voice was gone from shouting into headsets. Her hands were raw, her uniform stiff with sweat and blood. She hadn't eaten in a day, hadn't slept in 2. At dawn, scouts reported the largest wave yet forming on the horizon. "Everything they've got," Henders said grimly. "They want to finish us." Silence gripped the tent. The truth was unspoken, they might not hold. Mara met Hale's eyes. His face was unreadable, but she saw it, the flicker of doubt. Even he didn't know if they'd make it. Something inside her snapped. "Then we make them bleed for every inch," she said, voice raw. "We don't quit. Not now. Not after all this." The tent fell quiet. Even Herrera stared at her, surprised. Then Hale's mouth curved into the faintest smile. "She's right." The final assault hit like a storm. Hundreds surged through the desert, shouting, firing, trucks blazing forward. Mortars rained down, shaking the earth. Mara stood on the wall with her rifle, firing until her shoulder bruised, until the barrel smoked. Beside her, Deacon roared defiance. Herrera's men fought like wolves cornered, every bullet a prayer. The enemy kept coming. Closer. Louder. Endless. Then, through the smoke, the sound split the sky, rotors. Helicopters. Mara blinked, disbelief flooding her. Dust spiraled as Black Hawks swept over the ridge, rockets streaking into the enemy horde. The desert erupted in fire and chaos. Cheers broke across the outpost, ragged, exhausted, disbelieving. Reinforcements had arrived. The insurgents broke, scattering into the dunes. Mara dropped to her knees, sobbing with relief, her body trembling violently. Hale landed beside her, gripping her shoulder. "Told you. 3 days." She laughed through tears, shaking her head. 3 lifetimes. When the dust settled, the outpost was rubble, but it still stood. Soldiers staggered through the wreckage, wounded carried to medevac, ammo restocked, fresh faces replacing the fallen. Mara sat on the shattered mast, watching helicopters thunder overhead. She felt like a husk, but a husk still breathing. Hale approached quietly. His salute was slower this time, but just as sharp. "You've earned this," he said. She stared at him, eyes burning. "I didn't want to." "None of us do," Hale replied. "But war doesn't care. It just keeps moving forward. And now, so do you." She swallowed hard, the desert wind drying her tears. The battle was over. But inside, she knew it wasn't done with her. Not yet. The helicopters lifted them from hell at dawn. Mara sat wedged between Deacon and Herrera in the rattling Black Hawk, the rotors thundering above, the cabin stinking of blood, sweat, and gun oil. Wounded soldiers lay strapped to stretchers, medics bent over them, shouting to be heard. Her rifle rested across her lap, its barrel scorched black. Her hands trembled despite the weight of exhaustion pulling her eyelids down. Hale sat across from her, helmet tipped back, gaze fixed on the horizon. His expression didn't shift, didn't crack. He looked like stone, but Mara had learned it, stone cracked from the inside out. When the choppers touched down at FOB Hammer, the world shifted violently from survival to order. Soldiers in crisp uniforms rushed forward, medics whisking the wounded away, logistics officers barking about supplies, intelligence officers snapping questions. Mara stumbled down the ramp, boots hitting asphalt instead of sand for the first time in weeks. The air smelled of diesel and fried food, surreal after the stench of smoke and rot. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt untethered. They were herded into debriefing within hours. The room was cold, fluorescent lit, with a long steel table. Henders sat stiff-backed at one end, flanked by two officers Mara didn't recognize. Hale and Herrera stood against the wall. Mara sat hunched in a chair, her uniform stiff with blood and sweat, her eyes gritty from lack of sleep. The colonel leading the session tapped a pen against a notepad. Casualty report. Henders recited numbers flatly. Dead, 6. Wounded, 15. Enemy KIA, unknown, possibly over 100. The colonel didn't blink. And the insurgent strength? Broken, scattered, Henders said. But not gone. They'll regroup. The pen tapped again. The colonel's eyes shifted to Mara. Specialist Klein. She jerked slightly. Sir. You were instrumental in maintaining communications during the siege. Multiple reports credit you with keeping the defense coordinated. Mara's mouth went dry. Her voice came out rough. I just did my job, sir. One of the officers leaned forward. Your job was re-echelon technical support. Instead, you engaged enemy forces directly, repaired frontline comms under fire, and operated jamming equipment outside of your MOS. Care to explain? Mara's pulse spiked. She glanced at Hale. His face gave nothing. She forced herself to answer. Sir, if I hadn't, we'd all be dead. The officer scribbled something. Noted. The colonel gave a curt nod. You'll receive commendations. Possibly higher. But understand, specialist, heroics don't erase insubordination. You stepped outside orders. That creates problems. Her stomach dropped. Commendation and reprimand in the same breath. A paradox only the army could conjure. Hale finally spoke, his voice edged with steel. With respect, sir, if she hadn't stepped outside orders, none of us would be sitting here to debrief. The colonel's eyes flicked to him, sharp, but Hale didn't flinch. The silence that followed was thick as concrete. Finally, the colonel snapped his folder shut. We're done here. Dismissed. Back in the barracks, the survivors collapsed into bunks, the sudden safety making their exhaustion hit harder. Some wept quietly. Others stared blankly at the ceiling. Mara sat on her bunk, staring at her raw hands. The burns were scabbing, her knuckles torn open. She barely recognized them as hers. Deacon flopped onto the bed beside hers, groaning. I don't care what anyone says. You're insane. Thanks, she muttered. He turned his head toward her, his grin lopsided. Saved my ass twice. Guess that makes me insane too. She didn't answer. The grin faded. You're not sleeping, are you? He asked softly. Mara shook her head. The moment she closed her eyes, she saw flashes, trucks burning, men screaming, sand soaked with blood. Deacon didn't push. He just closed his eyes, muttering, guess we'll both go insane together. The days blurred. The base hummed with routine, formations, chow lines, supply trucks, patrol rotations. To Mara, it all felt like another world. She still smelled smoke in her hair, still tasted grit on her tongue. Everywhere she walked, soldiers gave her nods, murmured thanks, even pats on the back. Word of what she'd done had spread. She hated it. The looks, the whispers. Hero. Because she didn't feel like one. At night, sleep came in broken fragments. She'd jolt awake drenched in sweat, ears ringing with phantom mortars. She'd drag herself to the comms room, burying herself in wires and dials until dawn. It was there Hale found her one night. You're not fooling anyone, he said quietly. Mara didn't look up. What do you mean? You bury yourself in the equipment. Like if you keep fixing radios, you won't hear the ghosts. Her fingers froze on a bundle of wires. Slowly, she lifted her head. His eyes met hers, steady, unflinching. How do you live with it? She whispered. By not pretending it didn't happen, Hale said. He leaned against the console, arms folded. You let it scar you. Then you learn to move anyway. Her throat tightened. And if I can't? Then you die standing still. The words cut deep. She hated him for being right. A week later, orders came. Herrera's unit was being rotated back into the field to secure a valley rumored to house insurgent supply routes. Hale's SEAL detachment was tasked to reckon and strike deeper. And Mara? She was reassigned to them. She stared at the transfer papers like they were a bad joke. This has to be a mistake. I'm a comms tech, not. Henders gave her a look both weary and resigned. Not anymore. Command saw your performance. They think you're wasted behind a desk. Congratulations, specialist. You're moving forward. She wanted to scream. To tear the paper apart. But part of her knew, it was inevitable. She wasn't the same soldier who'd landed in the desert weeks ago. The army had seen it. Hale had seen it. And maybe, deep down, she had too. The valley was a different kind of hell. Green, at least compared to the desert, patches of scrub, rocky ridges, narrow passes that funneled everything into kill zones. The insurgents knew the terrain like wolves. Every shadow felt hostile, every ridge a rifle barrel waiting. Mara rode in the back of a Humvee, her rifle across her lap, headset crackling faintly with chatter. Hale sat in the lead vehicle, his voice calm and precise over the net. The mission was to sweep the valley, locate supply caches, and disrupt movement. Simple on paper. Nothing was simple out here. By dusk, they found the first cache, an old shepherd's hut, its walls packed with crates of ammo, RPGs, medical supplies. Deacon whistled low. Looks like they were planning for a long fight. Herrera spat. Not anymore. They set charges, the blast lighting the valley like a second sun. Mara flinched at the fireball. Her stomach twisted. Every destroyed crate meant fewer weapons pointed at them, but also more proof of how endless this war was. For every cache destroyed, another would spring up. For every insurgent killed, 2 more would rise. It felt like bailing out the ocean with a cup. The ambush came 2 nights later. They were moving through a narrow pass when the first IED went off, flipping the lead Humvee. Fire swallowed it, the blast wave rattling Mara's bones. Contact left. Contact right, voices screamed. Gunfire erupted from the ridges, traces streaking down like rain. The convoy dove for cover, bullets sparking off rocks. Mara's heart hammered. She pressed against the dirt, headset crackling with overlapping shouts. Klein! Get us comms up. Herrera roared. She scrambled, dragging her pack into cover, wires spilling like entrails. Bullets snapped overhead, dirt spraying her helmet. Her fingers worked blind, splicing, tuning, praying. Hale's voice cut through the chaos, calm as ever. Mara. Focus. One channel at a time. She swallowed her panic, obeyed. The net cleared, voices snapping into order. Herrera barked coordinates, mortar teams returned fire, gunships were called. The ridges lit with explosions, insurgents scattering. When the smoke cleared, the convoy was battered, 2 men dead, several wounded. But alive. Mara sat against the rock, her hands shaking violently. Deacon dropped beside her, panting. Still think you're not one of us? She didn't answer. She just stared at her hands, blackened with soot, trembling uncontrollably. Because she wasn't sure anymore. That night, around the fireless camp, silence hung heavy. Herrera sharpened his knife in steady strokes. Deacon cleaned his rifle in obsessive silence. Hale sat apart, eyes on the dark ridges. Mara sat with her knees pulled tight, head bowed. The others were soldiers by choice. This was their world. She had been dragged into it. And now, she didn't know if she could step back out. Because something in her had changed. Something she couldn't name. And she feared it would never leave her. The world outside the compound burned. Mortars had stopped falling, but their blackened scars marked the sand like the skin of some tortured earth beast. The air was thick with smoke, the night still glowing with flickers of fire from vehicles that had once been armored, once proud, now twisted wrecks. The acrid stench of burned oil mixed with the metallic bite of blood. Sergeant Riley Monroe crouched behind a broken HESCO wall, her battered radio cradled in her lap like a child she refused to abandon. Sweat streaked her face through soot, and her hands trembled, though not from fear, adrenaline, exhaustion, and sheer stubborn will. "Come on, you piece of junk," she whispered, twisting wires with the tip of her multitool. Her fingers were raw, knuckles scraped open. Sparks bit at her hands, but she didn't stop. 2 meters away, Lieutenant Commander James Hawk Hawkins, Navy SEAL, the same one who had once saluted her for quietly repairing comms in the background, kept his rifle trained on the darkness. His jaw was set, eyes sharp, scanning for movement beyond the smoking wreckage. "Riley," he said, low but urgent. "We don't have long. They'll regroup." "I know," she muttered, teeth clenched. "Which is why I need to get this working before your friends with RPGs decide to throw another party." Hawk allowed himself the faintest smirk. Even at the edge of hell, Monroe's sarcasm lived. But he didn't press her. He'd seen her do miracles with wire and willpower. If anyone could call in the cavalry, it was her. From the far side of the compound came the ragged cough of Private Morales. He was barely 19, his leg mangled from shrapnel. He had refused morphine, whispering over and over that he needed to stay awake, stay useful. Riley's heart twisted each time she heard him struggle for breath. She glanced at Hawk. "If I get this up, how much time until we see friendlies?" "Best case, 30 minutes. Worst case," Hawk shook his head. "We don't live that long." The radio sputtered. A faint hiss. Then, a crackle. Riley's pulse spiked. She leaned close, speaking softly into the handset. "Thunder Actual, this is Lightning 2-6. Do you copy?" Nothing but static. "Thunder Actual, this is Lightning 2-6. Urgent. Troops in contact, grid reference Alpha 49er. We are black on ammo, multiple wounded. Do you read?" The static hissed, then a voice, faint, almost lost in the chaos of frequency bleed. "Copy. Lightning, say again." Her chest surged with relief. She pressed the transmit button hard, nearly crushing it. "Thunder Actual, confirm immediate QRF. We are surrounded. Hostiles regrouping. I say again, we are out of ammo and overrun." The line went dead. Riley's heart lurched. She tapped the handset, adjusted the frequency, her hands frantic. "Don't do this to me now." From the dark beyond the wall came the sound they all dreaded, the guttural cry of enemy fighters, dozens of voices echoing, the metallic clatter of rifles being cocked. Shadows moved against the smoke, growing thicker. Hawk glanced at Riley. "We're out of time." She didn't look up. "No. I'm not letting this die here." The assault hit like a wave. Automatic fire tore into the compound, bullets snapping over their heads. Hawk dropped 3 with surgical precision, but there were too many. Morales tried to drag himself to a weapon, but Riley shouted at him to stay down. "Cover me," she yelled to Hawk, grabbing a spare battery from her vest. She slammed it into the radio, sparks flying. The set gave a hiss, then came alive with sudden clarity. "Lightning 2-6, this is Thunder Actual. Copy your last. Hold position. QRF inbound. ETA 25 minutes. Mark your position for airstrike danger close, do you acknowledge?" Riley almost laughed in relief. "Thunder, this is Lightning 2-6. Solid copy. Marking position now." Hawk yanked a flare from his pack, cracked it, and tossed it high into the night. A burning red streak arced overhead. The enemy fighters howled in fury, pouring fire at the glowing signal. 25 minutes. Riley gasped, ducking as rounds chipped stone inches from her head. "Yeah," Hawk grunted, firing another burst. "Plenty of time to die." The next 15 minutes blurred into survival. Hawk fought with ruthless efficiency, conserving every round. Riley fired when she had to, though her specialty was radios, not rifles. Still, each time she squeezed the trigger and saw an enemy fall, her gut twisted. Her brain screamed at her, "Survive, survive." But her heart whispered, "Morales. Hawk. The team." She had no right to give up when they hadn't. Then came the sound that froze her blood. The click of an empty rifle. Hawk's weapon locked back, chamber dry. He drew his pistol, face grim. "Down to the last dance," he muttered. Riley's own mag was nearly spent. Morales clutched his rifle but had only a handful of rounds left. The enemy pressed closer, shadows darting within grenade range. "Thunder Actual," Riley shouted into the handset, voice ragged. "We can't hold. We need immediate fire mission." The reply was cool, professional, almost detached. "Lightning 2-6, fire mission approved. Grid locked. Danger close." Take cover. Riley's breath caught. Danger close meant the bombs would fall almost on top of them. She looked at Hawk. He met her gaze without hesitation. Do it, he said. The first JDAM hit like the fist of God. The ground heaved, a thunderclap splitting the night. Fireball. Shockwave. The enemy fighters who had been screaming moments before vanished into smoke and torn earth. Riley felt herself thrown against the HESCO wall, her ears ringing, her vision white with dust. Morales cried out, clutching his helmet. Hawk had thrown himself over Riley, shielding her from debris. More explosions rolled in, one after another, until the compound was a storm of fire and earth. The night became day, then darker than night again. And then, silence. Only the crackle of fire and the distant thud of rotors approaching. When Riley opened her eyes again, she was lying on her back, staring up at a sky filled with ash. Her hand still clutched the radio. Hawk knelt beside her, his face cut and bleeding but alive. Morales groaned softly, still breathing. Above, silhouettes of helicopters loomed, QRF, their salvation. Riley let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. She had done it. She had kept the signal alive long enough. But as the medics swarmed in, lifting Morales onto a stretcher, one detail gnawed at her. The last transmission, just before the strike, hadn't been standard. The voice on the net had known her name. Not her call sign. Her name. And it hadn't been the voice of Thunder Actual. Hours later, aboard the medevac bird, Riley sat with her head leaned against the rattling fuselage. Hawk was across from her, eyes closed, his weapon still slung across his chest even as he half-dozed. Morales lay hooked to fours, stable for now. Riley held the radio on her lap. It was battered, scorched, but still functional. She traced a finger over the dials, her mind replaying the last words she'd heard. Hold position, Riley. We've got you. Not Monroe. Not Lightning 2-6. Riley. Who the hell on the net knew her name? And why did their voice sound so familiar? The helicopter jolted, banking toward the horizon where dawn broke across the desert. Riley closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling her under. But even as she drifted into uneasy sleep, the question lingered like smoke. Had they truly been saved by command? Or by someone else entirely? The end.